Good morning and welcome to Rising. We have such a great show for you today on this lovely Thursday morning where we're back and well rested, although I'm already manifesting a little bit of crankiness having to respond to text messages.
You know,
at this early hour.
One thing I learned about Robby over time is that you don't like even the slightest change.
Yes.
I can kind of roll with the changes. I'm actually excited about a lot of new things.
You're such a little burst of sunshine and happiness.
And you even get mad at the slightest change, like, oh, you usually text me at 5 p.m. You're texting me at 9 a.m. This is stressful.
People text me too often or just message me in general. I'm an in-person experience kind of guy. Let's get together. Let's have drinks. Let's smoke cigars. Let's experience life. I don't want to just be looking at my phone texting people all day.
I would prefer somebody to send me a voice note and get to the point.
Oh, God. Well, then they have to, no, that's the worst of all. Then I have to listen to something. Ugh.
Coming up on Rising,
God,
Democratic Senator Dick Durbin says a whistleblower has received that FBI Director Kash Patel's alleged decisions on bureau-controlled aircraft have negatively impacted high-profile investigations.
Plus, Vice President J.D. Vance and the Administrator for Medicare and Medicaid Services, Dr. Oz, well, they announced they were withholding almost $260 million in Medicaid funding to Minnesota in response to the state's fraud scandal.
And lawmakers grilled President Trump's Surgeon General pick, Casey Means, on Capitol Hill Wednesday. We're going to dive into that. But first, Robby, what is on your radar?
While most of America has been celebrating the awesome victory of our Olympic hockey team over Canada for the first time in 40 years, not everybody's so pleased with them. Sounds crazy, right? But a New York Times columnist for their athletic subsection, Jerry Brewer, he wrote a column saying that the team won gold and then lost the room. What? Lost the room? What room? The Feminist Studies Department at some sports-hating, fun-killing liberal arts college? Because I think most people are pretty happy about the win, even if you don't like or care about hockey. I fully admit this is the most interested I've been in hockey since I was a kid in Detroit in the 90s, watching our Red Wings win the Stanley Cup. So what gives? Well, the New York Times and some other liberals are mad that some members of our hockey team had the audacity to meet with President Donald Trump. Shake his hand even. Accept medals from him and praise. How shocking, how horrifying. Don't they know they're helping to normalize fascism? Seriously, that's it. That's the problem. Brewer writes, these are men who thrilled a nation and rocked the world, and as adults, they need to be more savvy. Trump, perhaps more than most modern presidents, understands the optics of standing next to winners. It normalizes him. It softens his cruel instincts and crude jokes, recasting them as locker room banter. It washes his reputation and reduces the impact of polls that indicate a significant majority of Americans disapprove of his second term. These champions have agency. In the afterglow of triumph, they have more agency than they ever will. They should be wary of giving it away so casually. Okay, but here's the problem with that. Supporters of Trump are a majority of the country. He won the election and he won the popular vote. Trump is normal now. Sorry about that. And I would agree it doesn't help us at all for professional athletes to lean way into politics or start talking about their views on issues. In fact, the hockey team avoided doing just that, and I give them great credit for it. But coming to the State of the Union, taking a photo with Trump, I mean, come on. That is normal. It's normal no matter who the president is. Remember Barack Obama taking this photo with Olympic gymnast Michaela Maroney? I don't remember people being upset about that. I wasn't upset about it. I thought it was a cool photo. Very cool. The New York Times needs to get over itself. Chill out. There's nothing wrong with the president being excited about the performance of our Olympians, our athletes receiving some much-deserved admiration. Ironically, the one athlete the liberal media did seem eager to celebrate was Eileen Gu, a traitor who chose to compete on China's Olympic team. You'd think that if we were so worried about normalizing totalitarianism, we'd be more upset about an athlete choosing to associate herself with one of the world's most brutal and authoritarian regimes, Communist China. But liberal Vox hailed Eileen Gu as a winner of the narrative surrounding the Olympics. And they said the U.S. men's hockey team were losers because they met with Trump. Losers. Ridiculous. Mainstream media wonders why so many Americans hate them. I think they have their answer.
Okay, well, I'm going to tell you flat out, I didn't like that New York Times article. I think that people should have the autonomy to go visit the White House, whether it's purely for the fact that you want to go see what it looks like or meet a sitting president. I think that we put too much on athletes to make these big decisions about whether they want to go to a White House or not.
I agree.
And for some people, the whole team doesn't have to be in unison. So even when you see like an NBA team win in the middle of something and they don't want to meet with Trump, then it automatically becomes political. I think accepting the State of the Union invite is probably a big deal. Most people in their lives are not going to go have an opportunity to be at a State of the Union address. So it would be a huge deal. So I think, I'm on board with you. I don't think we could skip over the fact that President Trump disrespectfully talked to the men's team and made a misogynistic joke about the women's team. And so therefore there's a whole controversy about the way that our president behaves.
But that was Trump, not the team.
Yes, the president made that joke and the team laughed about it.
Yeah, you're going to laugh. I mean,
no, you're not going to laugh, Robbie. I tell you all the time, we're not going to laugh about misogynistic. We're not going to laugh about
You laugh even if you don't like the joke.
No, I don't.
You laugh to get along.
But that's part of
the awkward not to laugh.
That's part of the argument, I think, that when we talk about this writer for the New York Times is making, is that our president is always inappropriate. Like more often than not.
You can tell on the show, Lindsay, as many misogynistic jokes as you want, and I will laugh along with you. When the cameras aren't rolling, you should hear the things that comes out of her mouth.
So the thing is that the president also, on top of making the misogynistic joke, we know that he genuinely probably feels like the women have less of a win than the men, even though Jack Hughes, I believe, and Megyn Kelly did the same thing, except she did the win that was so unfathomable 3 days in advance of him, and she got no recognition, no phone call, nothing, and her invite was an afterthought after his long conversation.
Well, he said they're coming to the White House, too.
Yeah, it was an afterthought. He said, well, I got to invite the women, so, and they all started laughing. And they turned down his State of the Union address. So the president consistently is inappropriate. So I get why somebody would be riled up about accepting an invite. But I do think that for an athlete to choose to go up there, you shouldn't take it as anything more than choosing to take a trip somewhere. It doesn't mean that they acknowledge and accept every single thing.
If the New York Times had written, the men's hockey team is awesome, but we should also recognize the achievements of the women's hockey team, I would not be complaining, and no one would be complaining. But also
that was they mentioned it in the article that the president made this misogynistic joke, which no one corrected him on. I mean, I guess you'd be kind of uncomfortable correcting a president, but some people wouldn't.
It's a joke.
Right is right, wrong is wrong. Okay. You know what I mean?
And then also Vox, how absurd they are. They call them losers. They put them in the L category.
That's not nice.
And they put Eileen Gu in the winning category.
And this is the
China
biggest,
simp.
This is
Communist
for some people,
China simp.
This is the biggest moment of their lives, winning a gold medal over a team that a lot of people looked at as unbeatable, the Canadian team. So let's not diminish a huge moment for people because of political affiliation that they not even saying that they have. They just want to be winners and not criticized. I think in the last months, what I've seen through our conversations is that we constantly ask athletes these random questions about how they feel about the U.S. in turn, which they relate to how they feel about President Trump, which are not the same thing.
Right.
You can feel a way about the country.
They should just say nothing. And the men's hockey team did say nothing. They were asked, and I think it was it Jack Hughes at I think it was him at the press conference who just said, yeah, I don't really know. So, I don't want to talk about it, which is the correct answer. And our athletes are put in this position by our media when news people never ask, again, the Chinese athletes, what about the treatment of the Uyghurs, which is far worse than anything Donald Trump is doing. That's actual authoritarianism, but we don't call them out for it. And so it's just absurd. Just ask them about the games and ask them about sports stuff. Stick to sports. That's my advice for sports people. Stick to sports.
Well, I think if they're going to lean into politics, they're welcome to, but just know it's a whole different world. And once you do,
I mean, if they want to say something, they can, but they don't know
perspective.
anything, and it's better if they know.
Some of them might, and that's why people might be hesitant, like the women's team, to come to a State of the Union when they know the president has said more than one thing derogatory about women, and then they got folded right into that through a phone call and a misogynistic joke. So some people might take the actions as a cosign. I think no matter how you take it, it's up to you to make the decision, and we shouldn't politicize a huge moment in these athletes' lives.
I think just as reporters shouldn't come up to me and start asking me about hockey, they shouldn't go up to hockey players and start asking about politics. It just invites disaster. Vice President J.D. Vance, next up. He wasted no time acting on President Trump's latest directive. Here's how he is cracking down on fraud in Minnesota. That's coming up. We'll be right back. Vice President Vance and Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services Director Dr. Oz, they announced on Wednesday that the Trump administration will be stopping certain Medicaid funds from being directed to Minnesota as part of an effort to crack down on fraud there. comes after President Trump charged the vice president with leading the newly declared war on fraud during Tuesday night's State of the Union. Take a listen.
This is the kind of corruption that shreds the fabric of a nation, and we are working on it like you wouldn't believe. So tonight, although started 4 months ago, I am officially announcing the war on fraud to be led by our great Vice President J.D. Vance.
The vice president took that charge and wasted little time making this announcement alongside Oz yesterday.
We have decided to temporarily halt certain amounts of Medicaid funding that are going to the state of Minnesota in order to ensure that the state of Minnesota takes its obligations seriously to be good stewards of the American people's tax money. This is disgraceful. It has happened for too long. Far too many people have gotten rich by taking what is the best of the American spirit and getting rich off of it instead of providing services to kids who need it.
This is not a problem with the people of Minnesota. It's a problem with the leadership of Minnesota and other states who do not take Medicaid preservation seriously.
The duo went on to announce that nearly $260 million in Medicaid funds would not be reimbursed, but they weren't done there. In addition to withholding those Medicaid funds, Dr. Oz announced a separate move that could have impacts beyond Minnesota. Take a listen.
Issue number 2 is we're announcing a 6-month national moratorium blocking all new enrollments for durable medical equipment, prostheses, orthotics, supplies across the board. These crimes are becoming a major source of fraudulent activity. There are twice as many durable medical equipment suppliers in South Florida than McDonald's.
Wow.
And that's not because Secretary Kennedy is closing down McDonald's. That's because the amount of fraud is so massive that it's easier to open one of these suppliers than open a bank account.
In response to the withheld funds, the Minnesota Department of Human Services told The Hill in a statement, quote, "Today's actions are on top of the federal action to withhold more than $2 billion in annual Medicaid funding to Minnesota. The state has submitted a corrective action plan to convince CMS to reverse course and is appealing." The commissioner of that state agency went on saying, quote, "Today's announcement is part of a broad and sustained attack by the federal government on Medicaid in Minnesota. Deferring $259 million will significantly harm the state's healthcare infrastructure and the 1.2 million Minnesotans who depend on Medicaid." Some online are echoing that warning that this could harm Americans. The Occupy Democrats account on X wrote in a post, quote, "So you go out of your way and hurt citizens because you're mad at Tim Walz? This is mental. How cruel is the Trump administration?" Look, I don't think you can cut first and investigate later, right? We know that Tim Walz was slow to respond to this. He's taking enough of the brunt of this that he's actually stepped out of the race for governor. So he understands this was a huge drop ball and oversight on his behalf. But I don't think that, you cut Medicaid programs for 1.2 million people. We're talking about pregnant women that don't have care, seniors, low-income children, people with disabilities, and then you figure out what the fraud looks like later. There's a lot of people that are going to be extremely harmed by this that have nothing else to rely on, that still need the care. Like if you're pregnant, you still are pregnant. You got to have the baby, right? I mean, if you're going to go through with the entire pregnancy. So I just think that, they need to figure out a different way to handle this rather than just punish Minnesota because of the fact that they don't think that Democrats in the state did enough to handle past fraud. He's decided to announce that he has a corrective plan in action. Too little, too late to a lot of people, including me, starting in December. I know a lot of people are upset about that, but I don't think that the beneficiaries should be the ones to get reprimanded or a slap on the wrist as opposed to the fraudsters. Let's lock everybody up who was committing fraud, but let's not make the beneficiaries suffer.
Yeah, I hope the state's corrective action plan is, considered in good faith by the administration. Certainly, I don't want to cut people who are deserving recipients of benefits, who are tax-paying citizens, who are entitled to whatever anyone else is entitled to. That's not fair to them. So I see your point. Just the scale of the fraud is so infuriating to so many people, and it sounds like, Dr. Oz seems to have a good handle on it, honestly. So you need to pause, figure out what's proper and legitimate, and then you can proceed and restore some of those services. I'm sure that is frustrating to people in the interim. I would need to know more about specifically what kinds of services are being shut down. That sounded like medical prosthetics was the number of offices being opened was what Dr. Oz was referring to, saying there's just it's a staggering number of people applying to be basically provide services and then be reimbursed by the government.
Right.
I mean, this whole thing is, the truth of it is it is a little difficult when you do. There will be obvious examples of fraud where they got government reimbursement to do things and nothing was done, where the fraud will be obvious. But some fraud is more subtle because, think about how this even works in a legitimate sense, right? Let's say you're not purporting to do any fraud. You want to provide a medical service and you're profit seeking, and that's fine. You're reimbursed partly by the government for the service or more than partly. You're reimbursed entirely and then some. So that's how you're making money. You're providing this service, and you're basically a government contractor who's skimming a little bit for profit. Mm-hmm. That's your business model, and that is legitimate. But then it becomes like, well, if you overcharge them, you're making more profit, and that is fraud. But like, do you know what I'm saying? Where it's there's this exact margin where what you're doing is considered legitimate because this is a legitimate profit-seeking enterprise to provide a government service and provide the service and be reimbursed. But if you try to get too much profit, then you're committing fraud. And if you don't get enough profit, then you're just
going broke.
Well,
I think that there's a difference between when you comb through it, the first people that should be targeted are the people that are already in trouble that we looked at that have committed fraud, and then people that are similar to those people who provided no service whatsoever, but just went through the paperwork to take government funds, right? I think that those are the worst of all people because these services, specifically medical services, are things that people are in dire need for, and they're taking up funding that helps people like that. I also think when he talks about cutting, the prosthetics and things are one part of it, but another part is that a lot of these hospitals and care providers are not going to get the funding immediately that they need to do the services, meaning that longer wait times will happen, is what I was reading, reduce access to care. So this is just going to create a conundrum within Minnesota, and not only about people not being able to get access to care, but the fact that how long it might take to get some really pressed for time things happening. Like if you need a checkup I can use the pregnancy example because I've been through it, right? There's certain times when you have to get a checkup to make sure that things are on the up and up. You can't skip over those for a month.
Well, but what kind of things are being shut down with relation to pregnancy?
Well, the access to people who are using Medicaid to get checked in on. So if care providers, say you're going to somebody that accepts Medicaid, and they're saying, we have 1,000 people now and less funding to take people, so we have to cut our staff. Well, guess what? Your appointment's going to be all the way in April, and you can't get your appointment in February. Or you got to find somebody else that takes Medicaid, and less providers will maybe think about not taking it because they're getting less funding.
I mean, I would need to know more about how this works. Is pregnancy services not covered under a basic health care plan that all people are obligated to have?
Okay, so let's see that there's a lot of people that don't have health insurance that are pregnant. That's just a fact. But then there are a lot of other, like I said, young children, people with disabilities.
Health insurance under your favorite law, Obama.
My favorite person, Obama. People with disabilities in nursing. Yes, exactly. But everyone is. A lot of people don't have health insurance, Robbie. Stop. Don't act silly right now. You know that a lot of people don't have health insurance. My point is that you're punishing people that didn't do anything for a larger crime that has nothing to do with them.
Well, they broke the law by not pursuing.
No, stop. Up next, Cuba says its soldiers killed 4 people aboard a U.S. registered speedboat, while Rubio vows to respond, quote, appropriately. Don't go anywhere. We're going to talk about that.
Secretary of State Marco Rubio is pledging that the U.S. will respond appropriately to the killing of 4 people in Cuba aboard an American speedboat. Let's take a listen.
It is highly unusual to see shootouts in open sea like that. It's not something that happens every day. It's something, frankly, that hasn't happened with Cuba in a very long time. But we're going to find out. We're not going to base our conclusions on what they've told us. And I'm very, very confident that we will know the full story of what happened here, and we will know it soon. And then, we'll respond appropriately based on what that information tells us.
Cuba's Interior Ministry on Wednesday said that its soldiers killed 4 people and wounded 6 others aboard a Florida registered speedboat. The Cuban government added that the 10 people on the boat were armed Cubans living in America trying to infiltrate the island and, quote, have a known history of criminal and violent activity. In an ex-post shared by Cuban embassy in the U.S., Cuba's Interior Ministry said, quote, when a surface unit of the border guard troops of the Ministry of the Interior carrying 5 service members approached the vessel for identification. The crew of the violating speedboat opened fire on the Cuban personnel, resulting in the injury of the commander of the Cuban vessel.
Many people in the media reacted to the incident saying it was an act of war, while others suggested waiting for the facts. Jesse Kelly, host of the Jesse Kelly Show, wrote on X, "It's a speedboat in the Caribbean close to Cuba. This might not be a deep-sea fishing expedition. Let's just wait for some facts."
This comes amid an escalating tension between the U.S. and Cuba. The Trump administration is restricting trade with Cuba, citing its close ties to Iran, Russia, and China. The White House has also threatened to punish any country that directly or indirectly provides oil to Cuba.
Yeah, I would also
Pause.
wait.
Yeah.
We don't know what's going on here. I obviously don't want to just take the Cuban government's word for it, but we have not had these kinds of clashes with them in the past in a very, very long time. So honestly, it does not, they might not be wrong here. They said this is Cubans trying to sneak back into Cuba for some criminal purpose. And if that's what it is, then obviously I don't really think any kind of retaliation on our part is warranted. If they, I'm opposed to the Cuban government, but we can't just have, we're not greenlighting some effort to send Cubans are going to go back to try to overthrow. I have no idea what this could be about. Drugs. It could just be about crime. It could be, I have no idea. We really have no idea. So yes, there should be no rash kind of response. And honestly, a response might not even be warranted because this might be a violation of their sovereignty.
Right.
If people are just entering their harbor or then they're opened fire on personnel, can't do that. Now, maybe that's not what happened. Who knows? They can be liars, but Marco Rubio has it exactly right. We'll stop, pause, wait and see.
One of the most alarming things for me is that the boat obviously is registered in Florida, and so therefore perhaps we could consider that it could be a Cuban American or an American on the boat. They didn't say who.
I take that to mean that they were in Florida and they came.
Right,
but
and
they're Cubans.
Right, but who knows? That's what I mean. Like,
Right.
Where did the boat? Who's the boat registered to? Was that person on the boat? These are all real questions.
I hope it's not
The
some
country-
stupid Bay of Pigs Part 2 thing where we told them to do it. I can't imagine.
Well, I
that's the
hope not,
case.
because then they have some explaining to do. But countries control waters that are in 12 nautical miles of their coast, and so this falls under that. This is going to be a lot of back and forth. I think that tensions that are already escalated. I mean, we cut off most oil supply to Cuba, particularly in Venezuela. So there's an active beef going on between the U.S. and Cuba. Not that they have any actual real retaliation power against us, but it's good to know that we're not in the best situation with Cuba, and we don't have to be. But this is where we stand, and there could potentially be an American-owned boat that was attacked, and we need to know who was on it and why. Next on Rising, the FBI director is using his best judgment when it comes to using taxpayer-funded, or is he, for travel? Stick around, we'll talk about it.
Lindsey, what is in it?
Let's talk about it. Let's start with what matters most. When a political activist is murdered on a college campus, the American people expect the FBI to move immediately. No delays, no distractions, just action, right? Now, there are serious allegations that in the aftermath of the assassination of Charlie Kirk at the Utah University, the FBI's elite shooting reconstruction team was delayed in getting to the scene, not because they were not ready, but because of a pilot shortage tied to FBI Director Kash Patel's use of Bureau aircraft. Senator Dick Durbin, according to him, a whistleblower told his office that FBI pilots who had flown Patel hit federally mandated flight hour limits, triggering required FAA rest periods. That meant the team tasked with analyzing and reconstructing the shooting scene couldn't deploy for at least a day. Reuters has reported that it could not independently verify those claims. The FBI has strongly denied the allegations, with spokesperson Ben Williamson calling them, quote, ridiculous, and saying Director Patel was on official travel at the time. But here's why this matters. The FBI director is required, for security reasons, to travel on government aircraft, even for personal trips, and must reimburse the government at the cost of a commercial flight. That's not new. What is new is the scrutiny over how frequently those planes are being used and whether those decisions are affecting operations. Durbin alleges this isn't isolated as a concern. He also points to the response to the Brown University shooting, claiming Patel's decision to put the hostage rescue team on standby instead of activating closer regional SWAT teams effectively tied up Bureau aircraft and forced other responders to drive overnight. The FBI disputes that characterization, noting the incident was initially state-led and saying resources were not delayed because of directed travel. So at this point, we have competing narratives. On one side, a senior senator citing whistleblower claims of operational strain and delayed deployments. On the other side, the Bureau flatly rejecting the accusations and defending Patel's travel as official and appropriate. But let's just zoom out for a second. The head of the FBI sets the tone. And according to Durbin, Patel once told field offices, quote, if you have golf, hockey, fishing, or hunting, and beautiful sights, you're going to see a lot of me. Maybe that was a joke. Maybe it wasn't. But leadership optics do matter, especially when you're overseeing time-sensitive, life and death investigations. This is not about beer in an Olympic locker room or optics about the Olympics. It's about whether taxpayer-funded resources are being managed in a way that prioritizes mission first every single time. If the perception exists that travel decisions could delay justice in a murder case, that's not partisan. That's a governance issue. The Government Accountability Office and the Justice Department's Inspector General are now being asked to look into it. That's appropriate. At the end of the day, this is simple. Leadership is about judgment. And when you run the nation's top law enforcement agency, judgment isn't a side issue, it's the whole job. What say you?
Well, look, I was also kind of critical of Kash Patel yesterday with the Olympics, meeting with the team. Not that he met with the team, that's fine. He's a big hockey fan, but should really be flying the jet to Italy. But as you noted in your radar, he has to fly for security reasons on the jet. So, I don't think he's obligated to give up all personal travel to do this job.
But he must be in Italy for hockey to celebrate.
In an ideal world, he would just, if he really wants to go to the Olympics, he would just fly commercial, but he's not allowed to do that. So he's got to take the jet. Yeah, he has to pay for it himself.
But they're now saying that was an official trip. So he's blurring the lines he said that they were over there for work. And I'm not mad about somebody in a high power position celebrating with people that have won an achievement of a lifetime. I care about the fact that we're now having examples, and this is on top of the fact that Kash Patel has been the face of many times dropping the ball. So when he comes out and speaks about stuff, even about telling us the wrong information in regards to Charlie Kirk, he's been the face of that, boldly and wrongly. And I think the fact that now we know that his personal travel may or may not, according to this whistleblower, have tied up flights and official aircraft from getting to places that require urgency, that's problematic, tied to the fact that he's not doing a great job. I think we talked about
it may be problematic, and he's not doing a good job sometimes with the optics of the job. I don't know, they captured the Charlie Kirk killer pretty quickly in my book. I didn't love the things he said in the wake of the shooting of the Capitol officers, of the guard in the Capitol, excuse me. I didn't like. He also said the thing about not bringing a gun to a protest. That was wrong. He's the Epstein thing. We're going to talk about Epstein later, so we should not get into this yet again.
He wanted a certain size jacket, I believe, before he stepped off the plane one time.
Embarrassing.
Yeah, he's doing a lot of stuff that really doesn't sit well, that you should just take his word for it. I just think that also leadership requires you to have at least appear like you had it together. He's overseeing, and simultaneously, while the Olympics, and there may be an official job for him over there, there's some things that are happening that are in the national spotlight. I know you don't want to talk about Epstein, but now this...
No, I just don't want to talk about it right now.
Right now, we're going to talk about it later. But even the fact that the Nancy Guthrie case, whether people think it should be in the national spotlight the way it is or not, it is here.
It should be in the national spotlight, certainly.
Right, but I'm saying the amount of missing cases. Some people argue there's so much we could use these same resources for. This is a high-profile instance.
Well, it's a high-profile person.
And the fact that we're here and the FBI has decided to be part of this investigation, and this woman, unfortunately, is still missing, and he's, again, in Italy for official business. It all doesn't look good. And your job, to me, in this position is to first appear to be organized in getting to some solution, and then also do the job well. And I think that is some of the biggest concern that Kash Patel, he doesn't even seem like he even cares about being correct or looking like he has it all together. And particularly, and I know we're going to talk about Epstein later, but he also has this big thing that's covering the national news every single day about the fact that his agency has redacted a lot and turned it over to the FBI and is not doing any explaining about why this is getting to Thomas Massie and Ro Khanna so sloppily, but he's in Italy. Like, he has the time. On top of that, he's taking personal trips that may or may not be affecting the actual job being done.
Well, they may or may not. They also just might not be affecting how the job's being done. I don't think it's the redactions of the redactions. They try to go through millions of pages of documents, and it
takes a while. They're super busy.
There were names that were properly redacted because they were people who had nothing to do with Epstein, and Ro Khanna read their names on the House floor without waiting a moment to find out whether they had anything to do with Epstein. It turned out they hadn't. So that wasn't an FBI screw-up. That was a Ro Khanna screw-up. He said there's no evidence of people that Epstein procured girls for those people, and having looked through the files myself, I now conclude that he was correct in saying that. So I'm actually more frustrated with Pam Bondi than I am with Kash Patel, because she introduced error into what she was talking. She made it sound like she did have that document. It did exist. I think it's clear it doesn't.
I think you have more leniency for Kash Patel than most people, and I just want to understand why. If somebody's not doing that great of a job, I think we should just be fairly
that's subjective
saying
that he's not doing that great of a job. I don't know.
You'd give it if you had to give him A through F, you'd give him A plus?
Based on what, like, the things he says on TV.
You're the FBI director, and you're incorrect about information.
I'd have to look at how many crimes are being, like, what is the like, our anecdotes are anecdotes. Is the FBI closing fewer cases or more cases than last year? Have they started more investigations, fewer or more than last year? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I couldn't just render a verdict based on the fact that he wanted a jacket that was too big. That's stupid, but it's also stupid.
I wish you had this much leniency for Jasmine Crockett. That would be nice.
Well, she's an elected representative.
No, I wish you had that much leniency for her.
I don't. Senate Democrats next up grilled Trump's nominee for Surgeon General yesterday. We'll give you the highlights. Stay with us. The Senate Health Committee hearing testimony on Wednesday from Trump's Surgeon General nominee, Dr. Casey Means.
Means faced tough questions from Democrats and even some Republicans over her views on things like vaccines, hormonal birth control, and over her qualifications and potential conflicts of interest. Means is a wellness influencer, author, and entrepreneur who has risen to stardom among the MAHA movement, and in the past has touted the benefits of so-called raw milk. Fellow Dr. Senator Bill Cassidy pressed Means right off the bat on whether she believes there's a link between vaccines and autism.
We've had an outbreak of whooping cough in Louisiana, vaccine-preventable disease. Some have been scared to vaccinate their children because they've been told incorrectly that vaccines cause autism. Do you believe that vaccines, whether individually or collectively, contribute to autism?
Until we have a clear understanding of why kids are developing this at higher rates, I think we should not leave any stones unturned.
There's been a lot of evidence showing that they're not implicated. Do you not accept that evidence?
I do accept that evidence. I also think that science is never settled.
That answer received praise from some on the panel, like Senator Marquayne Mullen, who went on to bash the Affordable Care Act, prompting this testy exchange between him and Senator Bernie Sanders.
As a father of 6 kids, yeah, I want to look into it. I want to know what's causing it, and I will turn over every stone. And so, Dr. Means, thank you for saying I want to turn over every stone. I'm saying let's go after it. Let's look at it. Let's question what we're doing. Let's look at the healthcare system. God forbid we change and go after and try to fix our broken system. Anyways, I ranted too long. Let's talk about some...
Yes, you did.
I'm sorry, I didn't ask your opinion on that. And if I cared about your opinion, I would ask you, but I don't care about your opinion.
Well,
you're part of the system. You're part of the problem. You've been sitting here longer than I've even been alive.
Meantime, Democrats honed in on Means' reported conflicts of interest. Take a listen to this exchange she had with Senator Chris Murphy.
Function Health, which is your lab testing platform, data shows that you disclosed your partnership
with them less than a third of the time that you recommended their services online. Genova Diagnostics, you disclosed your sponsorship in only 2 of the 9 times that you promoted Genova. As a medical professional recommending a product, you were hiding the fact that you had a financial partnership.
I would be very interested to see how your staff looked at this data. I have a strong feeling that the way in which they gather this data is done intentionally to create these claims.
But it wasn't all bad. Senator Sanders actually seemed to find some common ground with Means, despite reportedly having reservations about her candidacy.
Do I understand your view is you would fight to ban TV ads of junk food?
I think you will be frustrated by how much I will be talking about ultra-processed foods.
Good. I won't be frustrated. I'd be delighted. All right, let me ask you another area that we may have some agreement. As you know, the United States and New Zealand are the only 2 countries in the world that allow the pharmaceutical industry to advertise on TV. I believe we should ban those ads. How do you feel?
I agree with you.
A lot to unpack here.
Well, I don't agree with that.
What, banning the advertisements on TV of
Yeah.
Well, do you like when they say at the beginning, I mean, at the end, da 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 da, you could die, da 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 da. Like, it's just like they say that really quickly and smushed in the last 10 seconds.
The First Amendment, Lindsey, doesn't care if I like it or not. It's
Well,
speech.
I'm just telling you. I just think, you know, a lot of people see, oh, wow, this drug can do all these wonderful things. And then you could die at the end. Like, you know.
Well, that's a regulation that they have to.
I know. Very quickly and swoosh language and really fast on 20 times the speed. Yeah, sure.
Trunvidian.
Don't say any names because now we're bashing
made
people.
up a name.
It sounded very close to a real name.
Is not responsible for. Talk to your doctor if you develop sudden red spots all over your nose or whatever.
I think that what we like to do is take people and make them just wholly bad or wholly good. And I think that we have to just be able to pick apart some things that maybe, it's the same thing I feel about RFK. Like, red dye shouldn't be in food, I agree. And then sometimes he goes on a tangent for me. But I still have a kid and I want her to eat the healthiest options available. So I'm happy he's looking into stuff, but also don't want him to go too far. I think in some claims, the fact that she works with specific, whether it's brands in the healthcare industry or medicines, whatever she's promoted, I'll have to go through her Instagram. Whether it's been transparent or not, she has these relationships that would make her seem biased to certain brands, which obviously you have to say that you won't do as you continue to take on a federal role. I would trust that maybe like other people, she would try to do that, but I know how the government works. It's a lot of lobbying going on behind closed doors. But I think that what Sanders got so mad about when you saw that testy exchange is the fact that we understand, and doctors have said, surgeon generals have said, and rigorously examined the fact that vaccines are not causing autism, and it's been rejected. And so when we have somebody who's nominated for a position like this, it's not about them saying don't take any vaccines. It's about the word and the messaging getting jumbled all together so that parents at home are scared to vaccinate their kids of all vaccines. I don't care if they're saying it about measles or not saying it about measles. Parents get nervous about that. I know because I have a lot of parent friends. So when they hear some uncertainty coming from the top down that's not transparent and clear, that they want to look into it, then you might dissuade parents from getting vaccines, which is also causing an uptick in diseases that we largely eradicated historically.
We should not dissuade parents or anyone from not vaccinating their kids for measles or the other preventable illnesses that pose a serious risk to children's health. I completely agree with that. We have to be honest with people, though. And the truth is that we don't have, we have not come up with solid evidence that vaccinating people causes
at all. It's actually been disproven multiple times.
Okay, but we don't have evidence to show a link. What I suspect goes into autism is it could be a million different factors. There's no one thing where if you don't do this thing, you won't have autism, right? It could be that there is a small percentage of the population that is even at risk for autism for some genetic factor, and then if there's a combination of a million different environmental factors and the stars align, that's how it happens. It's not one. That's right. That's probably what it's not one thing that like, oh, if you never walked under a ladder when you were 2, you won't get autism. Like, it's not like that. It's not just one thing. I certainly don't think in the cases where the vaccine is not dramatically improving your health outcomes, like that's the case for COVID and flu for young people, then I wouldn't be recommending them take unnecessary invasive things where there is no proven benefit, right? We don't usually just give things to people that have no discernible health benefit, which is the case for those things. Now, for measles and the other things, there is clearly a discernible health benefit. So you have to weigh that risk. So even if there was some incomprehensibly small risk of raising your potential for autism, frankly, the risk of dying of measles is so much greater that you should still, even if it did link, do you know what I mean? That's why I'm saying we got to be honest with people. Like, even if there was a risk, the risk of measles is by orders of magnitude greater. So that's why the calculus for that vaccine is very clear. But for the COVID vaccine, it's not, because the negative health outcome for the people in that age range for COVID is also so astonishingly low.
Well, I think why Bernie Sanders is so riled up. Yeah, I totally hear you.
That's why I separate these things.
But I think why Bernie Sanders is putting everything together is because since COVID, which you know well and I know well, credibility in public health has completely almost diminished.
They threw all these things in the same bucket and said, if you oppose any of these things, you're an anti-vax moron weirdo, and that increased people's...
Right, so vaccine skepticism has also increased people dying and cost lives. So we know that we have to figure out how to balance what happened during the pandemic to what's happening right now. Like young kids dying most recently in Texas because their parents decided not to vaccinate them. For what reason? Only thing you can consider is that they've been listening to the ongoing debate about looking into things like autism. And then you just want to make sure that like we're not causing more deaths by things that we understand are helpful for the larger society. So that's the biggest thing, is that you can be mad. Everyone can be upset about COVID, but you have to come back from this and not take the most dramatic response, which is, okay, I'm just going to stay away from everything that the public health officials say. I don't trust a word, which is sometimes the default.
Next up, more trouble for Don Lemon. Some Minneapolis churchgoers reportedly suing Lemon for severe emotional distress after January's anti-ICE protests that he was involved in. We'll be right back. According to multiple reports, a woman who says she attended St. Paul, Minnesota church service last month is now suing Don Lemon, claiming she suffered emotional distress as a result of the anti-ICE protests that broke out inside the church.
In a court document first obtained by TMZ, Ann Duchette alleges that Don Lemon and other protesters unlawfully interfered with her ability to, quote, freely exercise her religion in a private place of worship.
Doucette claimed she suffered severe emotional distress, fear, anxiety, and trauma. Court documents allege Don Lemon appeared to take satisfaction in the disruption as he live-streamed the incident.
Video surfaced online in January that shows anti-ICE demonstrators disrupting service at the city's church in St. Paul, Minnesota. They confronted the pastor, whom the protesters alleged was connected to ICE. Demonstrators were chanting, quote, ICE out and justice for Renee Good. Lemon, who was arrested by federal officials late January, said that he was exercising his First Amendment right as a reporter to document the incident. Lemon and 9 others were indicted on federal civil rights charges of conspiracy and interfering with the First Amendment of rights of worshipers. This came after a 37-year-old U.S. citizen and mother of 3, Renee Good, was fatally shot during an encounter by an ICE officer in Minneapolis.
Very interesting.
You know,
I mean, so we'll have to see, again, a couple things, facts that are not known to me need to be sorted out.
By the federal government or by what?
Well, by the legal process.
Okay.
If he doesn't have a First Amendment right to be there, it's private property. Now, you can go, a church is, is opening its doors to people in general. Mm-hmm. So is there a moment where it's clear, where the pastor says, leave, and then if they don't leave, they're trespassing? Of course, they were charged with more than trespassing. So then you'd have to get it. Now, is he blocking people from leaving? That has to do with the criminal set. That was alleged that someone fell when they were trying to get out because they were creating a disturbance so that people couldn't leave. And Don Lemon was part of that and knew what was going on, knew what was going to happen ahead of time. In terms of this inflicting emotional distress, that's honestly probably going to be a lower bar to prove. These civil matters usually are, because that's just a preponderance of evidence versus a clear and convincing evidence.
Actually, if she was the one that tripped, it would be easier for her case in this civil charge case to prove that you had severe emotional distress. It's a really high bar for courts. I was reading about it because look, it's
a high bar.
Yeah, high bar.
Lower bar.
No, it's like you have to prove, it says your involvement wasn't purely journalistic. You have a lot more to prove that you actually have severe emotional distress, like you're saying, fear and trauma. And he really impeded and wasn't doing his job as a
My
journalist.
understanding is the burden of proof is literally lower. The burden of proof is literally like preponderance of that, right?
I mean, you're going to show your
matters.
therapy sessions and say that Don Lemon directly is the one who caused that?
People do this in lawsuits that I find silly, but things that
Don
go before
Lemon
Judge Judy. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
Like my neighbor did whatever. These kinds of disputes between
Kicked my
people all the
dog.
time. There are a lot of them that I think are totally stupid. But
Well, the fact that he live streamed the event and he was literally providing a play-by-play, and we have that on video, might be hard for her to say that he directly, as opposed to any other protesters,
might make it easier.
were hindering her in any way. She said he found satisfaction in it. You're going to prove that he found satisfaction by telling you, if you could see in front of me, blah, blah, blah. Like, I was watching the live stream. He was explaining what was happening. So the fact that he is explaining play-by-play, how is that causing you emotional distress? She's welcome to... We always talk about this. You want to civilly sue people to the day you die. I think that sometimes it's petty. You think that it's petty, but you think the president, for example, can do whatever he wants when he wants to civilly sue all these places.
Anyone can sue any other person for any reason.
Right.
The robber who stubs his toe as he's robbing you, he can sue you for having your chair at a place. Right? There's
so some lawyers
cases like that where it happens. We all know these ridiculous cases. So. Frankly, if I had to guess, I bet he's more likely to have to pay out in this suit than he is to actually be convicted on the charges.
Some lawyers look at this
It's
and they
literally
probably
more
saw like dollar signs in their eyes when they thought about what's happening in the federal government. And
Trial attorneys.
Right. There's a lot of people.
They
You call
always
them,
got dollar
in
signs.
other situations, you call them ambulance chasers, but in this time, you're calling them trial attorneys. Like the language around it.
No.
You
they're
got to be
ambulance
consistent
chasers.
with the language. They're ambulance chasers.
And Don Lemon's
and
a
they see
wealthy
this.
guy.
Oh, he
So
is.
they will be all
He got
over
paid
this.
out by CNN. I don't think he's going to have trouble paying it, but hopefully he has a good lawyer and doesn't have to pay it because he was reporting the news. He was exercising his First Amendment
generally think
rights,
this is bad.
freedom of the press.
So I think there's too much abuse of the tort system. We all want tort reform. That's a very bipartisan thing, although trial attorneys are a major Democratic constituency, which is why we never get tort reform. Because it's their money. How they make their living, how they buy their speedboats. That does it for us today on Rising Live. Thanks so much for watching, and look out for more exclusive YouTube content coming your way later today. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe to the Hills YouTube channel so that you never miss any content. And for those of you who like to listen while we are on the go, we're now available anywhere you listen to podcasts.